So we're wrapping up the 6 perfections, theoretically. And this is both the beginning and the end. The perfection of wisdom is, as we laid out last week, the map, the guide. This is the nature of things. And at the end, it's the realization of the nature of things. We find liberation. It's something to understand that samsara, or suffering, the confusion that we have, the fears, the anxieties, the resentments, all this that we experience is fundamentally out of confusion, out of a misperception. And that samsara is not some place, and nirvana is not some other place. That samsara and nirvana, no other place. It's fundamentally how I experience, the nature of my experience. So the place doesn't change. My mind changes. I start perceiving and seeing things more accurately, and I get to more and more unravel the confusion of concepts and grasping and afflictions that really block me from recognizing my true nature. So we don't need to work on all that. We just need to work on this. But getting there, a little bit of work. So these 6 perfections, we did a really, I think, thorough job in going through the 4 noble truths, which led to the 6 perfections, and the 6 perfections being imbued with an understanding of our connection to each other. Bodhicitta, this great compassion that as I suffer, I don't want you to suffer, that we're all suffering, and it's arising dependently. It's not separate from. And with that aspiration, that's how we engage in this path of awakening, the Bodhisattva path, which is the foundations, the 6 perfections, the foundation of that. So, going back to the Noble Eightfold Path, first is wisdom. 6 perfections, last is wisdom. But at no point are they ever linear, right? They're always intertwined. They always fuel each other. But if we don't have a roadmap, it's hard to know where to go. And here we come to a point where we break it down. What's the nature of things? What's the nature of self? Why would I partake in this process of trying to understanding the deceptive appearance of things, the confusion of things? And so it's really important to notice that that's really where my suffering comes from. A real clear grounding that my mental and emotional suffering that I experience is a direct result of misunderstanding of samsara, the nature of things. If I see things clearly, that would not happen. So it's a pretty good motivation. Pretty good motivation. And so what's it mean when we go, well, we say things like, I have my problems. Where does your problem exist? Seems very real. I have my problems. I'll tell you about them. It's concrete. It's here on this paper. It's in this note. It's in this letter. It's this notice I got. My problem is my relationship with so-and-so. My problem is, my job. My problem is, where does my problem exist? It seems very concrete, very real. And when I have a problem, then I'm going to suffer because I got a problem. And what if we recognize that there's no inherent existence to my problem? Be hard to have a problem. So there's pretty good motivation in discovering that maybe there's no inherently existing problems. Might be problem free, I don't know. But it seems like a problem, feels like a problem. Yeah, there's a lot of suffering that comes with my problem. So here we start to investigate the nature of things. Does my problem exist inherently? And so the framework here is that everything we experience does not exist independently from its own side. There's no self-existent problem, chair, cup, book. But it sure looks like it does. And therein lies the confusion. There's me and there's you. And this is my hot water, which provides me pleasure. And so this conventional experience that we have seems very independent and we don't see it accurately, so it appears deceptively to our minds. And out of that deceptive appearance, then we find things that we like, things that we don't like, things I want, things I really don't want. And fears, worries, concerns arise from really wanting the things I want, avoiding the things I don't want, fearing I won't get what I need, and all of this arises in a way that we believe to be true. But if we look a little more precisely at things, maybe they're not so true. Maybe it is a little more deceptive. And so it's this great unraveling that this piece of wisdom comes to. So how do things actually exist? There's three ways that things exist in this sort of conventional piece. If we start to understand, how something appears, and we can use any object. We've done this cup a lot, right? People, we all know about this cup or mug. Is it a mug or a cup? I don't know. But I kind of like books. Books are kind of fun. Anybody like books? Yeah, I like books. You look at a book and you think, okay, well, there's a book. It's pretty clear that's a book. It's over there. There's a bunch of them on the shelf. And so for anything to exist, whether it's a book, a piece of paper, a shelf, a cup, well, it can only exist dependently, right? There's no independent book. It always has causes and conditions that gave rise to it, right? So within the book is the tree that the book came from, right? Within the book is the binding, the glues, the piece of the paper, the people that shaped it. I mean, all the causes and conditions that give rise to a book, including the desire to read a book, the desire to write a book, the ideas that are written on a book, the ink that's in the book and where the ink came from. And, we can break it down even more and more, let alone the whole publishing industry. We don't need to go that far. And then the marketing, that deals you gotta cut. And then, then you have a book and it looks very independent, but in fact, it would not exist without the tree and the papers and the sun and the soil that raised the trees and the people that cut the trees and all that gave rise to just some of the material that went in the book, let alone the book and the writing of the book. And then sometimes none of that's available because I have a Kindle book. So I didn't need a tree or water or things, right? Unless there's something to do with the tree with one of these, I don't know. Because now I can read a book here, but it's still a book, right? So my book's here, but there's books on the shelf. It's a very different thing. But none of it arises. It's not an independent thing that came from nowhere. It always came as a dependent arising, causes and conditions that gave rise to anything, to me right now, to the words I use, to the place that we're in. And when we look at it, it's deceptive. We don't recognize that I'm seeing something that doesn't exist independently. It's always dependently arising, including me and my perception of it. Maybe I didn't know what a book was. You know, I don't know. Some people have never been around books and don't know how to read. So that's one way. And then the other that we look at is if we're trying to find the book, right, is that everything's made up of parts, right? The parts, the attributes, the parts. You can start breaking it down. Well, where's the book? You know, is it the cover? You know, is it the pages? Is it this page? And then you know, is it the what part of this is the book? And what you kind of start finding, and you wouldn't even find pages to tear apart on a Kindle book. That just came up for me. That was kind of interesting. I hadn't thought that one through. But the words, the paper, the things, you know, what's a book and what's not a book, when does something become a book? Food. That's one of my favorite ones because you really get it because, you know, food's here, and then I eat it. We're going to be eating some later. It's food, then I'm eating it, then it's no longer food, right? It starts becoming me. Some point it's food, some point it's me. Some point it's food, some point it's me, at some point it's me. And at some point it comes out another end. It's really not me at all. Certainly isn't food anymore, at least not for me. And we start noticing that this thing that looked like food, whatever, has these attributes, and we can't find those attributes don't equal food, same attributes or qualities or parts. Which brings us to the third way things exist, which is labels and concepts. Right? So that's this idea that if I start to understand that food, what I label food is a label, and the label is very functional and helpful. But that label is in my mind. It's not out there. There's no pizza that came out pizza. You know, there's causes and conditions and multiple pieces that came to rise, including all the people who made all that. And at some point, you know, this phenomenon that I see, I label food or pizza. I'm saying pizza because I know we're going to have some. We would suffer if we didn't have that after I said that, right? Because there'd be attachment to the concept of pizza. And now I suffer because I had it coming. So these are the typical three ways that people approach starting to understand what we call emptiness, the empty nature of phenomena, the non-bookness of the book, the non-pizza-ness of the pizza. And we start to understand that phenomena appears very independent, but it's really not. And fundamentally, what makes a thing, so I label it a thing, right? I label it a pizza, I label it a book, I label it a phone. But when we try to find the phone, we're not going to find the phone anywhere but my mind. Okay? The parts don't break down to find the phone. There's no one part in there that is independently a phone. And so when we start to look at this, we start to realize that we experience phenomena in a way that isn't how it exists, because things exist not independently, not separately, not absolute, but much more of a transient nature of causes and conditions that arise in dependence upon other causes and conditions that I experience, and based on how I'm experiencing them, I'm going to have some feelings or some thoughts or some attachments. And I'm going to attribute those to, like, for example, the pizza, because that's a lot more delicious than my phone. That pizza is going to make me happy. And then I want more pizza. And I keep thinking that's the cause of my happiness. So therein lies a problem. But if we look at all this, we go, so what? Who cares? As long as the pizza makes it here, we'll be good, right? Like, how does that cause my suffering? Well, then we come to, well, what actually makes the pizza taste good? Those of you who have been studying here for a long time, you already know the answer to that. Where's the delicious? That's a good question to ask, right? Because I like delicious, so I'd like to know where it comes from. And so here's our fundamental confusion, because we'll obviously think it comes from the pizza. Or the popcorn I just had, which had nutritional yeast, a bit of olive oil, light salt. Popped. It's a nice little popper. I was on a popcorn thing last couple of days. Where's the delicious? And fundamentally, the delicious is a dependent arising from my experience of the phenomenon, we're going to call pizza. If I like pizza, there's some people here who may not like pizza. We have a much wider audience online. So I apologize if you're not going to get pizza, if you like pizza. But therein lies the crux of the problem, is we see things, we label things, we experience things, and we think that's the way things are. I love this person. I find this pizza delicious. I really like this, and I really don't like that. As though this and that are the things that give rise to me liking or not liking something. And what we miss is that the real cause of deliciousness is this dependent arising, and the biggest determinant factor is the karma I've created to experience something as pleasurable or not. That's the thing to remember, is that the way karma and emptiness work together is that this experience I'm having of phenomena is a very subjective one and dependently arises based upon all of those causes and conditions, as well as the ones I've created in my mind stream, the karmic imprints I've created, which create the lens through which I experience you, my food, my activities, others. And if I change these karmic imprints, all of what I experience changes. Nirvana, samsara is no other place. I will experience the same phenomena differently, which is pretty cool, because that empowers us to take responsibility and opportunity to transform our lives, which is really wonderful. We don't have to change Earl down at the corner. Yeah, that changed me. If I start changing me, Earl at the corner is no longer a big problem in my life. I experience them differently. So then, understanding the nature of emptiness and why it's relevant is foundational to understanding the role karma plays in my experience. And that if I start engaging in these practices of ethics and generosity, the things that we've gone through, with a view of the nature of how things are put together, right? Not just I do good things because I want to do good things, but I do good things, wholesome things, with the understanding of its impact on myself and others and the nature of things. That's really the path of awakening. is I'm understanding it, but I think Sandu makes a difference, not just to me, but to you. And I'm cultivating the conditions from which I can see more clearly as I attend to this experience that we call this human experience. So if we follow this process, then the more wholesome activities I engage in, imbued with an understanding of the nature of self and others to the best that I can, I'm going to have a lot of delicious meals. And I'm going to have a lot fewer annoying people in my life. And so I'm going to experience things very differently. And the lens through which I experience things changes. So karma works as though once a cause, there's a result. Cause, there's always a result. Cause, there's always a result. So all the time I'm creating causes. I'm creating imprints into my consciousness. So I have this mind stream that goes on. It's continuous. It's like a river. That's a nice analogy. Not a soul that doesn't change, but much more of a mind stream that's experiencing things. I'm different than when I walked in. I'll be different when I leave. It's a consciousness. It's flowing. And so you never enter the same river twice, right? I can't go back to who I was 10 minutes ago. But keeping that river flowing is a mass of karmic imprints of continuity that's continually arising in dependence upon previous karmic imprints. And so I start to see things sort of habitually, and I feel things in kind of automatically. And my habits, my tendencies, my likes, my dislikes, I tend to reinforce those. And they tend to help me fill in the picture that I'm seeing pretty easily because it's pretty quick. I'm not thinking about it, it's just arising in dependence upon your karma, my karma, the things that Carbondale karma, wherever you're at karma, the world karma, human karma. And if I start changing my karmic imprints, I'll start changing my experience of things, which is pretty empowering. Very difficult to do though, because we very quickly can have this talk and then we know we really don't like so-and-so and we really do like so-and-so, and here's my problems and there's my worries and there's my concerns, and they'll seem very real. So it's so ingrained and habitual that undoing it takes practice. They often call it, swimming against the stream, right? Because everybody's going this way, and we're going, no, I don't think that's the way it is, And so this is the path of cultivating these perfections in ways that allow us to create all of the potentials to start unwrapping a confused state of mind of karmic imprints that give rise in a way that causes all this confusion and grasping and attachment. Keeping track of our new time here. So how do we do this? Number one is, first we have to have a firm grounding in the transient nature of phenomena and how I'm experiencing it. To understand that labels are in my mind, they're not how things are. That labels are functional, serve a purpose, it's helpful. Misapplied, very unhelpful, and causes a lot of suffering, right? So we can think of any one person we don't like right now, I imagine. Might be a political person in nature. And, wow, I can have feelings around that. And I may have never met this person. I never experienced this person. And the construct I have of this person is in my mind. It's not an independent, frozen person out there. Other people like this person, right? they experience the same phenomenon differently than I do. And if I think about different aspects of this person or this quality, or that they potentially could change, or all of that, I can start shifting how I experience that person consciously. But our mind will typically freeze a person into a concept, and that's how they are. And I like them or I don't like them. Or I might hate them. I might love them. Until I don't love them anymore because now they're doing this other thing. And yet our minds don't really see all that. They just grasp onto a construct. I have a feeling this is the way it is. So unraveling, it's very important to start to notice, is it the person, the place, the thing, or is it the way I'm relating to and experiencing the person, place, or thing? And if I start relating to it differently, would I have a different experience? And is it actually true that the person is the way I think they are? Or is that just a dependently arising event? So we have to investigate this, because if they independently are that way, let's just all hate them, man. And the other thing is we don't know how things will turn out, right? It's always a fascinating thing. This is the worst day ever, which gave rise to the best day ever. This terrible thing happened to me, which gave rise to this wonderful thing that happened to me. Our minds aren't working like that. Terrible day, good day. Good day didn't come from nowhere. It came from the terrible days, right? Couldn't add the next few days. We had these other experiences that give rise. So understanding the nature of dependent arising, the nature of emptiness. What we mean by emptiness shouldn't take longer than a few minutes. Is that the phenomena that we're focused on, a person, a chair, an event, whatever the phenomena is that we label, is basically fundamentally we're saying it's empty of those, of the label. It's really not, you're not going to find that label in that thing. It's empty of it. We're filling it in, actually. Like my experience of you, I'm filling in based on my karma and my the lens through which I experience you. You're bringing something, and I'm filling in the details. You're bringing something, I'm filling in the details. So everybody's going to experience you differently than I do. You're going to experience me, each of you, a little bit differently than I do. Well, no, you'll experience me differently than others do, but probably different than I do as well. But that's just not the way we operate. So it's this unraveling to start to notice that, and to notice that if I shift even my attention on something, I might like it more. I should focus on this one little thing, I may not like it at all. And yet we make it so solid, so real. They're the cause of my suffering. But they really can't be the cause of your suffering. They can be the cause of your pain. They can hit you with a bat. We're talking about mental and emotional suffering. So the path of liberation is to start to unravel the misperceptions, the hardness, the reification, the solidity with which we experience the world, and start to recognize its very transient, interdependent nature. So we can see things more clearly, more accurately, and be more present in the moment in a way that it more accurately exists. Because the whole problem is confusion and misperception. So the Buddhism, basically, fundamentally, the whole story is to be accurate. Which is why we do really well with scientists. Let's look this up. Let's see. Let's go. What's true? What's true? And see if we can, in this way, if we start to focus more on seeing that dependent arising, seeing that I'm bringing to the table. How I've lived my life creates my subjective experience. Right? So that you're bringing, but how I experience you in a given moment also has a great deal to do with me. I fill in the details. And I can start changing this. So the key point, I didn't land there long enough, so I just want to go back to that, is that if what I'm experiencing now is causal, it's caused, now it's causal. What I'm doing now, no, this is resultant. Sorry, I said that backwards. That was the cause, this is resultant. What I'm doing now is causal for my future. So in order to be a good practicing Buddhist, you really need to be good at delayed gratification. Because I want to feel good at this moment, so I know I can act in a certain way, and it might be unwholesome to feel good in a moment. But if I act in a wholesome, helping, kind way now, it may not ripen for a while, and it might feel bad now, but fundamentally, it'll cultivate those conditions later. You need delayed gratification to be a good Buddhist. And it's a discipline, but it's one that we can perceive and pay attention to and notice. So it's not, it's very measurable in a sense, but it's longer based. So, they say if you want to really evaluate your meditation practice, well, you start meditating, and then maybe 6 months later, you start to check in. Hey, I had a good session. I had a lousy session. That's not going to get you anywhere. Likewise, in our practices, we start to notice, is my mind calmer? Do I experience things more clearly, over time as I start paying more attention to reality and noticing my exaggerations about the quality of people and events and things and reifying them as though they're the cause rather than understanding I've created quite a bit of the cause myself. Not all of it, but I'm bringing something to the party that is prevalent. When we're around an annoying person, we tend to just not want to be around the annoying person, not understand, wow, why am I so intolerant? Yeah, that's not usually the question we ask. But that would be a good question to ask. Whatever's happening is an opportunity to transform your life. It's always an opportunity to cultivate wholesome karmic imprints with wisdom into the path of awakening. It's how I respond. It's not what's happening. What's happening is already happened. How do I respond? So understand that nature of things, then returning anger with anger is just going to create anger. Responding to anger with compassion and wisdom, well, that's a different result. Which might mean I have a boundary, but I'm not going to hate you. I'm going to understand your suffering if you're treating me with anger. And there's some difficulty there. So it's a healthy way to interact with your behavior, with knowing that you're going to change. And it's just how you're showing up in this moment, not who you are as a human being. What would it be like to live like that all the time? I would suggest you'd suffer less. And so that's a working hypothesis. The more you live in reality, the less you suffer. Sure, it's not. So in this wisdom piece, the key is to start understanding, what we call emptiness, the dependent arising experience that we're having as always dependently arising, as always having an impact with a subjective experience that I've cultivated and created over time. Which is not to say that if a terrible thing happens to me, I deserve it. Okay, that's not, I get beaten up, I get raped, I get, all these things happen. I had something to do with that. But also the people doing it, they had their karma. The culture with which this all happened had that karma. That, we're always interacting with a much bigger playing field than we see. And so when terrible things happen to us and people think, well, it's my fault. No. You had something to do with it, but so did a myriad of other people and beings and everything that gave rise to whoever maybe did a harmful thing to you and their parents and all the people and their experiences and, all of their needs that didn't or didn't get met and the culture with it. I mean, just rapidly. So we're always, that's the other part, is interdependence. We're interdependent with a big web of life, which allows us to eat food and survive and read and write. And so we're not independent ourselves either. So we really need to be gentle with ourselves. That's one of the biggest problems with Western mind streams, is we are hard on ourselves instead of giving ourselves a more accurate assessment of how far we've come and how we've participated in events that are very challenging to us, and trying to get our needs met and trying to find some way of being okay, which is what we do. On the other side of that coin, if something terrible happens to me and it hurts, that karma is gone. So that's kind of cool. Oh, purified that. So created, caused, gone. How I respond matters now. So when terrible things happen to me, or I go through something difficult, physical pain especially, well, my karma's gone. It's kind of cool. Instead of why me? That karma's gone. It's purified. It's gone. It's ripened. Not purified, it's ripened. So let me pause there and just check see if anybody has any questions or any thoughts around that, and invite those of you online as well. You can, I think there's a little button to raise your hand. Aaron will get to you.
We have a raised hand.
Already have a raised hand. It's so exciting. Hear the voice. Hello, Shelley.
Hello. Hi. I have a question about the experience of the Jews in the Holocaust, how we can understand that in the light of karma. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Good question. And, the most honest answer is we're not ever going to understand that, right? Not ever going to understand that. The way that, the context I like to approach things, like whether it's genocide or, and I can speak a little more to things like the genocide with the Tibetans as well. But in truth, we don't know how this works out. We don't know the bigger things at play, but fundamentally, we also don't know that when somebody has a terrible death, that it wasn't the last bit of karma, that they're now liberated. We don't know where somebody else is on that path, but we do know the karma that gives rise to hatred and bigotry and racism, right? So there's causes and conditions for that. I was a history major, so a history teacher, and there's very clear in the books of how World War I ended and how it created the causes and conditions for World War II very clearly by not resolving the primary issues and this rise of nationalism, again nationalism, us first, and imperialism, and these concepts that gave rise. And so collectively, we can start to understand karma in a way that we reify and grow habits and conditions that flourish. So on one level, I think we can get that. As far as how much suffering takes place and how that plays out, in a much bigger, karma is a very complicated thing. And for example, I like to point out His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who we know here now. China invaded Tibet, killed I know over 1 million Tibetans, and tortured, and that whole thing as well. Then it's horrific. Likewise, would we be here at a Dharma center if the Dalai Lama hadn't come out of Tibet? And is there, how many people have been impacted by the fact that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has come out? And now we have MIT, which has the Center for Ethics and Transformative Values, Stanford, that has a whole department on altruism. Every university, I just got a message from a little monk at every university. A little monk, he's at Emory's, at least 20 now, who sent me a message on Facebook. It turns out we're brothers from the monastery. And he was in the monastery I was in, and we had the same teacher in the little family group in India. And he's at Emory University studying as a Buddhist monk. So we don't know, I think is the correct answer. But we do know, because we don't know the bigger problem. We don't know how having met one person one day, or this terrible car accident one day, ripple effects across this whole wave of experience that we're all having, which made someone do another choice, which wrote a book, which did all kinds of people. We just don't know. We don't know the genocide. We do know the damage that can be done by grasping onto anger, hatred, a sense of self, pride, and grasping, nationalism, and racism. That's very evident. So karmically, in that sense, we can get it. But as far as, you're not going to say, no one knows, why these particular people that had to suffer like that, and let alone the ones who lived. But I also don't know, like when I was a history teacher, we always did big subjects. I am quite familiar with genocide. I taught it, we went in depth. And I would bring a survivor to come out to our school. I taught in a difficult neighborhood, low income, diverse, big school, tough environment. And I'd bring this Holocaust survivor, this woman. She'd come down, she'd talk to her class, and we'd put things together. And I would have kids run across the campus who are not in my classes, who would want to come and meet her and thank her and be near her. And how many lives she touched, how many lives she touched. She would volunteer at the Museum of Tolerance, and she'd give talks, and she'd do things. I'd go drive up to the valley and bring her down. We'd have lunch, and she would share with our classes. And how many lives are touched? How many lives are touched because of Anne Frank's book? In other words, there's no absolutes. Even from terrible things, wondrous things happen. So it's really quite fascinating. You know, would we be here today had China not invaded Tibet and tortured all those, killed all those beings? You know, I was a Tibetan monk, and Dalai Lama was a big part of causes for me being a monk. Yeah, so it's a tricky question. But I think the bigger one, the answer is just things play out at a much bigger level than we know. But what we can attune to is that our wholesome activities will transform our experience in the nature of things. So thanks for that question, Shelley.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Kind of at 7:30, but they had a burning question. Okay, thought you were gonna sneak out. Now if we all look at you. Yeah. Nobody noticed. All right, well, I think we'll probably have another session on this. It is so critical. So this is the whole point. You know, so I invite you this week to notice how we reify and make things very solid. People, events, places. And see if we can soften around that to start to notice, wow, if I experience that or look at it differently, and is that how that person is, or is that how that person is in this moment? Are they different in different moments? You know, people can be pretty kind one moment, not so kind another. Can be pretty wise with some sage advice, and get some pretty crazy advice another moment. Likewise, what am I bringing to the moment? But being aware, and this is where mindfulness is so critical, is that what seeds am I planting in my consciousness? Am I watering the seeds of anger and division, cruelty? Or am I watering the seeds of kindness and compassion, wisdom? Because that's what we could be planting and growing. And that's where this tying all these together, generosity, ethics, you know, our patience, our effort, is this: we meditate to have more concentration, we engage in wholesome ethical behavior, we develop generosity as an antidote to attachment. We are effortful in noticing states of mind that are unhealthy and confronting them, maintaining states that are healthy, supporting them, and constantly noting the misperception. Really bringing to mind the transient, transient dependent arising experience that we're having as fluid. It's fluid. Yes, Stephanie.
Doesn't all what you're saying too have to do with us softening our sense of self too?
Yeah, absolutely. So softening our sense of self. We didn't get to that point of who am I? This was the experience of phenomena. And then the next is, what's the I I'm grasping to? So that sees all this.
The I that sees all this, or the I that makes these judgments and
Yeah.
labels others.
Yeah.
There's such surety. We know, I know that that's how that person is.
Right. So coming from, I'm repeating what you're saying for them online. This sense of I that is seeing, that is experiencing, that is judging. And fundamentally, when we recognize that I isn't the I we perceive, we might find out that my ego is not my amigo. and try to discover a more accurate sense of self along the way. Yeah, so that's the core root that you're bringing up, is And foundationally, as we identify me and mind with that which is not me and mind, which gives rise to all this. So I'm hoping next week, not next week, the week after next, whenever I'm here again, we'll see if we can unravel me and mind a little bit and see where we can start identifying a little more accurately with a more accurate sense of self, which is an interesting investigation. Okay, well, let's go ahead and dedicate the collective merit and wisdom that we have accumulated here today, together and throughout our lifetimes. Such a gift to be able to engage in a path of awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering, find their liberation. And may we be able to dedicate the merit and wisdom we've accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to help us purify our own minds, to help us see more accurately, to engage in this path of awakening with generosity, ethics, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom, that we may recognize our true nature, our Buddha nature, so that we can truly benefit all sentient beings. And may we also dedicate this merit and wisdom to the long life of all the spiritual teachers, of all spiritual teachings that are authentically teaching a path of awakening. May they live long, may their teachings flourish.